They're the scourge of all nations. The most infamous cutthroats of their day.
Let's board them and cut them to pieces!
During the 17th and 18th centuries, pirates in the Caribbean board thousands of ships.
Balls away!
Sacked dozens of cities.
Ladders up!
And violently chart a course for stolen treasure, murder, and revenge.
Why aren't they dead yet?
Larger than life.
I'm not gonna hang for you, Jack!
More dangerous than legend. They capture the imagination of the world and map out a fearsome chapter of history as true Caribbean pirates. October 1492. Explorer Christopher Columbus searches for a western passage to the Orient. Under the sponsorship of Spain, he makes landfall in the Caribbean in an island chain now known as the Bahamas. 2 years later, Pope Alexander VI and the Treaty of Tordesillas grant Spain the exclusive right to the Caribbean and most of the New World.
They didn't know how much land they were even talking about. Spain and Portugal worked with the Pope, drew a line on the globe and said, all of this will be ours.
Driven by an insatiable quest for wealth, Spain conquers the Aztecs, the Incas, and most of the Mayan civilization.
The whole area becomes known as the Spanish Main because it's the mainland where the Spanish tap unbelievable riches, billions of dollars worth of gold and silver.
There is no treasure to be mined in the Caribbean, but the islands offer a much-needed stopping point on the 6 to 8 week journey to Spain.
The Spanish would stop and get water and food for their trip home. And one of the things they did was they released livestock on these islands, and the cattle and hogs flourished.
This plentiful food supply also attracts a very tough breed of adventurers. Maverick intruders, mostly from France, England, and Holland.
Some of them are riffraff. They're former prisoners. They're people who can't find jobs, vagabonds. If they can get on a ship, work their way over, they can jump ship and end up living on these islands and living off the meat. It's also a place for adventurers.
And they learned how to take strips of the meat and dry it over racks. And these racks were called boucans. They learned this technique from the local native Indians. So they became known as the boucaniers. That's sort of the French term, and then that got anglicized into the word buccaneer. So originally, buccaneer meant jerky makers.
During the early 1600s, the island of Hispaniola, now the Dominican Republic and Haiti, becomes an unofficial home for buccaneers from France and England.
And then they would sell this jerky to the passing ships. And occasionally they, being enterprising souls, they might take a ship.
When the Spanish started getting rattled about this French presence and English presence, they started killing off the wild cattle and pigs. Then the bucanier had to really try to find some other way of making a living.
And so if that community stops hunting boar and bull and they start hunting people, most specifically Spaniards.
The Spanish created the Pirates of the Caribbean.
For the governments of England and France, the buccaneers are the perfect weapon to harass the Spanish, allowing both countries to open up new territory in the Caribbean. In 1654, Oliver Cromwell, Lord Protector of England, sets his sights on the island of Hispaniola. 4,000 miles to the east, at Portsmouth, England, a massive invasion fleet is assembled.
18 warships, 20 transport vessels, 3,000 men.
On Christmas Day, 1654, the British force prepares to leave. Among those who volunteer is a young ensign from Wales.
Henry Morgan.
Sign here.
Henry Morgan will eventually become the greatest buccaneer admiral in history.
Ensign.
Known worldwide as the Sword of England.
Did you say Morgan?
Sign up.
Aye.
Edward Morgan's nephew?
Aye, and the nephew of Thomas Morgan as well.
Morgan was very well connected. One uncle was a general in Charles's Royalist army, and another uncle, Thomas Morgan, was a general in Cromwell's army. And I think from their exploits, he learned an awful lot about warfare and leadership.
It's going to be a while before we see England again, though.
Aye. But when we do, I'll be the richest Welshman in all of London.
The second richest.
It'll be well you know your place.
Where's the wind? Get it tight.
It takes over a month for Morgan and the troops to cross the Atlantic. But when they arrive at Hispaniola, high seas force them to land 25 miles from their target, the city of Santo Domingo.
So much for our surprise attack.
It takes the British troops 3 days to reach the outskirts of Santo Domingo.
The Spanish were prepared. As the British troops came in through the jungle to Santo Domingo, the Spanish knew they were coming.
We gotta retreat!
The English are decimated and beat a hasty retreat through the jungle.
And it looks like the whole thing is going to hell in a handbag. They can't go back home and say, oh, it's been a complete failure. So they look around and they invade Jamaica.
It wasn't heavily defended. The Spanish saw no real value in it. But once the English settled there, they then used it as a base to make an awful lot of money for the crown from the Spanish treasure fleets.
The British buccaneers make Port Royal, Jamaica, their base of operations.
The English know they can't send a navy over to protect Jamaica, so they hire the buccaneers to protect Jamaica from the Spanish and also to attack Spanish merchant ships.
It was far cheaper for the English crown to tell owners of boats, you go and fight the Spanish, you take all the profits. And it's far cheaper than trying to raise a navy, which is very, very expensive.
For both England and France, private ships fighting for profit, or privateers, hold the nation's hope for competing with the Spanish on the seas. In late 1662, Morgan is given captaincy of his own ship.
You look sturdy enough.
Get us to where the gold is. That's all that matters.
Permission to attack the Spanish requires a privateering license from the governor, known as a letter of marque.
Captain Morgan.
Privateering is simply the ability to raid commerce of the enemy in time of war. You do it with a license, there's a legal setup, and you've got to bring the ship and the prizes back, and then everybody gets a share.
The governor who will help catapult Morgan to fame is Sir Thomas Modiford.
Anything missing, and it's the last license you'll see.
Have no fear. There'll be plenty for us and the king.
The king is in England. It's my share I care about.
In the Caribbean, the legal definition of privateering will become subject to very loose interpretation.
The Caribbean was basically a free-for-all. There would be Spanish being attacked by English, French, Dutch. English began attacking the French. The Dutch were involved. It was basically sort of a frontier zone where anything goes.
Henry Morgan, by the legal definitions of the time, is usually a pirate. Every once in a while, he is carrying documentation that would appear to put him in the category of privateer. But then you have to look at the documentation itself, and it can be a bit on the shady side.
Henry Morgan proves himself in buccaneer campaigns, earning a reputation as a fierce fighter and a brilliant commander.
Morgan had the good fortune of being a leader with a tactical genius, a talent for leading men, and living at a time in the West Indies when such a man was needed.
In January 1668, Jamaica's Governor Modiford appoints Henry Morgan Admiral of the Buccaneers. Morgan commands more than 15 ships and 500 men.
You'll be any later?
Aye.
But unlike the Navy, participation in any attack is voluntary.
I am going to hit Portobello. All who are with me, we sail with the tide.
Portobello was thought of as impregnable. It was the third biggest Spanish city in the Caribbean and South America. It was the main treasure port, and so it was heavily, heavily, heavily defended.
The treasure ports are very well armed and well manned. There are 3 forts in Portobello, and you're just looking at death if you decide to attack. Morgan says, I don't care, I'm going in.
Well, Morgan knew it's impossible to take direct from the sea. So he landed his men a few miles away and hacked through the jungle.
Audacity is one of the greatest virtues in warfare. Anytime you have a target, whether it's a defended city or a ship that considers itself invulnerable, it is, by its very nature, vulnerable because it is overconfident. And a great leader is one who can recognize that sense of invulnerability and seize the moment. When someone believes they are invulnerable, there's a psychological lag when attacked. It's, how can this be happening to me? They can't be attacking, it's impossible.
Stunned by the sudden ferocity of the onslaught, the Spanish defenders are slaughtered.
They're just very efficient killers. And if you fight them, they're going to come after you straight on. And they're very good at what they do. They're trained killers.
They are hyper-violent. I mean, terrifying.
After he takes the first fort, you really have to move on quickly and take the other forts. One after the other, they fell like dominoes.
As dawn breaks, the Buccaneers move into the town. But the largest fort is still ahead.
Entregar armas a todos, a un cocinero.
Now carry on, men, as we plan. The same will be here when we get back. Now stay together.
Morgan rallies the Buccaneers. But this time, the Spanish defenders are ready.
¡Preparen cañones! ¡Que no se acerquen a las murallas! ¡Fuego! ¡Carga más rápido!
As buccaneers have got near the walls, there's a rain of fire pots, which are clay pots filled with combustibles and explosives. There's a rain of grenades coming down upon them.
Well, there's no turning back now, Captain. I make sure the rest of the men know that as well. Ladders up! Ladders up! Ladders up!
You're watching True Caribbean Pirates on the History Channel. July 1668. British Admiral Henry Morgan leads 350 French and English buccaneers. They are engaged in a daring assault on the Spanish city of Portobello, located in present-day Panama. Outnumbered almost 6 to 1, Morgan and his men come under heavy fire from the last of 3 fortresses.
These men would storm through this hail of weapons, of lead and explosives. They would open fire upon the fortification with small arms, muskets. The idea was to suppress the fire so that musketeers within the fortification could not shoot back.
A buccaneer typically has a musket, a cutlass, and 1 or 2 pistols. And they will use their muskets to devastating effect by alternating fire, making sort of a continuous barrage.
Ladders up! Ladders up! Ladders up!
Morgan had a dedicated team of people who knew that if they didn't succeed, they'd die. So it's a good motivation. You either work as a team or you die. The Spanish couldn't believe that Portobello had gone. There's nowhere else like Portobello. For that to be taken was a huge blow to Spanish esteem in the New World.
For the citizens of Portobello, what follows is even more frightening.
We shouldn't whitewash history. We need to recognize that many of these assaults were brutal, and the aftermath of many of these assaults was even more brutal.
A lot of them had escaped in the melee and perhaps had taken their valuables with them. So the ones they had captured, they were torturing them, forcing them to tell where the goods might have been hiding.
You will tell me where the valuables are. Tell me where your gold is. Tell me where your valuables are, or this is your fate.
I think the most sort of extreme example usually for people is taking the men and hanging them up by their genitals till the weight of their bodies makes them fall to the ground, at which point they are stabbed 3 or 4 times and then left to die.
Yes!
What is it? English!
In the well!
They say that Henry Morgan had tortured men, women, and children. How much of it was by his own direction or how much of it was men operating on their own, we may not know.
To prevent them burning the city, the Buccaneers are paid more than 100,000 pieces of 8. When they return to Jamaica, Morgan and the Buccaneers look for ways to spend their newfound wealth.
My lovely lad.
They go back to wherever they're based. They debauch like mad.
They would have a week of partying, drinking, prostitution, till all their money was gone. Once their money was all spent, they would go right back out and do it again. It was a crazy life.
Then, in August 1670, Morgan sets his sights on the greatest prize in the New World.
Here. That's what you've got in your mind. Here. Aye. You're the captain. Aye, sir.
Panama is the second largest city in the New World, a critical seaport for gold and silver mined in the mountains of South America. Approximately 36 ships and 2,000 buccaneers answer Morgan's call.
Nobody had the capacity except Morgan to rally everybody in the Caribbean and say, we're going to go after not a little village, not a little town, not a little pearl boat. We're going to go after the big time.
There's no Panama Canal back then, and so to get there, you have to go overland.
They then had to spend several days hacking their way through the jungle, catching terrible diseases, starving, living off rats they could catch, any snakes, anything at all.
After 9 days' march, Morgan and his men finally reached the Pacific.
Well, there it is, the Pacific.
Another bloody ocean.
1 day's rest, then we get this done.
On a grassy plain outside Panama, Morgan's buccaneers face the city's defenders. The Spanish are rested. They have the advantage in numbers.
Here you've got this nice bunch of townsmen who are militia, who've learned how to fire a gun. Most of them are very uncomfortable doing that. And here you've got these guys who know what killing's all about. And so the pirates sweep right through them. Anybody who's had any sense in Panama is already on a boat heading somewhere else.
While the city burns and the buccaneers celebrate victory, the Spanish treasure galleon, La Santísima Trinidad, slips out to sea with much of the city's wealth on board.
Well, this way for next to nothing. And who torched the city?
The take from Panama is surprisingly small.
By the governor.
It had been a large force of men that had taken Panama. So by the time everyone got their share, they didn't get very much. And rumors went around that Morgan had taken more than his share.
Rumors of the treasure that Morgan supposedly stole persist to this day. Most historians think it never existed in the first place.
Everybody, of course, is always looking forward to discovering pirate treasure. Imagine yourself as a pirate where you've risked your life, you've fought battles, and then you're going to allow the captain to take a chest of everything you've captured, go off to the coast somewhere, in a cave or on a beach, dig a hole, put the treasure in, and then sail away. Now, pirates may not always be rational actors, but that's a highly irrational act to allow the captain to go away and bury the stuff. What's in that for you? You're not going to do it. What you want is, soon as there's treasure enough, you want a division.
Ease up, men.
The men were supposed to share out the treasure. Put it this way, there's not one single documented treasure map that's ever been found. The treasure maps are from fiction, so you know, it's not worth digging too many holes.
Facing accusations of piracy, Henry Morgan is summoned to England by King Charles II.
Spanish tell me you're a pirate.
But they would, wouldn't they? They don't like the English.
Sit, sit.
And the end upshot of it was that Charles II knighted Henry Morgan and made him Lieutenant Governor of Jamaica.
Arise, Sir Henry Morgan. We are most pleased you will be our representative in Jamaica.
After serving as Lieutenant Governor of Jamaica for 7 years, Henry Morgan dies peacefully in 1688 at the age of 53. In the years that follow, the Caribbean remains a seething powder keg of almost constantly warring superpowers. On September 7th, 1701, the four seafaring nations, with stakes in the Caribbean, wage an all-out war for supremacy. Known as Queen Anne's War, the conflict pits England and Holland against France and Spain. 12 years of war transform men into masters of the brutal art of ship-to-ship combat. On April 11th, 1713, the cannons are finally silenced. The Treaty of Utrecht brings the long and bitter war to an end.
For the first time, Spain is saying, all right, England and Holland have a right to conduct trade in the Caribbean. For the first time, Spain is going to recognize the legitimacy of that.
When Queen Anne's War ended, shipping boomed, trade reopened with former enemies, the markets doubled. The only people who lost were the privateers of Queen Anne's War.
40,000 English sailors, many of them combat veterans, are suddenly out of a job.
The men that had been privateers basically knew of no other way to make a living. All of a sudden, what they had been doing and being rewarded by the English government was all of a sudden not only illegal, but it was punishable by death.
I say we keep hitting the Spanish.
Bloody bastards.
And if the governor has a problem, we raid his ports too.
The Caribbean is primed for the greatest explosion in piracy that the world has ever seen.
Rich bastards.
The spark comes on July 24th, 1715. A treasure fleet of 11 Spanish galleons sets sail from Havana, Cuba, bound for Spain. Their holds are filled to bursting with gold, jewels, and 7 million newly minted silver coins. Six days after casting off, the fleet sails into a hurricane.
The Spanish plate fleet, the treasure fleet, wrecks off of the coast of Florida, spilling millions of dollars worth of bullion and jewels all over the seabed. Of course, this was an absolute magnet for pirates.
And the Spanish, of course, said this was still their gold, even if it was under the water.
For the Spanish who will try to recover this fortune, and the pirates who want to steal it, the fight for unimaginable wealth is about to begin. You're watching True Caribbean Pirates on the History Channel. July 1715. A hurricane sends 11 Spanish galleons loaded with treasure to the bottom of the sea.
Most of the silver is recovered, but unfortunately the ships they sent out aren't enough to carry all the silver back in one trip, and they leave about 350,000 silver coins in a small shack on the shore with about 60 guards.
In Port Royal, Jamaica, rumors of the poorly guarded treasure reached sailors who are out of work and out of options.
You heard? Spanish had lost their plate fleet.
Among them, legendary privateer Henry Jennings.
But they didn't have enough room on their ships for everything they salvaged. I've heard tell over 300,000 pieces of eight.
Henry Jennings, like most of these fellows who ended up as pirates in the Caribbean, started his career as a privateer.
How fast to round up a crew?
He wasn't someone to be trifled with.
Led by Jennings, 300 ex-privateers launch a raid from which there can be no turning back.
The privateers decided to make that one personal leap of faith beyond privateer into piracy. They storm the shore, and the 60 guards who have been sworn to protect the 350,000 pieces of Spanish silver immediately turn and run in the jungle.
Come on!
This is what kings see. And treasures.
Aye. Look at it, lads. Tonight we found our future.
The raid by Jennings and his men on the Spanish salvage camp in Florida, the perfect attack. They made the equivalent of 10 years' salary on one night. It's a pirate's dream.
The new pirates sail back to Jamaica as wealthy men. But the reception is not what they expect.
If you place your foot on Jamaican soil, on orders of the governor, my men will shoot it off.
You don't want to be cocking that thing unless you mean to use it.
Easy, Charles. We have gifts for the governor. We are prepared to take them directly to him.
For decades, pirates have been able to raid the Spanish and just receive a wink and a nod from the English government. The days when someone like Henry Morgan could sack Panama and be knighted for it were over. The English weren't going to look the other way at this sort of piracy.
They're just doing what they're told. Prepare to set sail.
They're not welcome in Jamaica, and it really signals a turning point in the history of piracy.
The pirates cast off, searching for a haven they can call their own.
From this point on, pirates are enemies of the world. And by the same token, the ships of every nation were fair game.
Set a new course. West-northwest.
So it's Bahamas.
Aye. Good hunting for those who want to stay pirate. Nice enough for those who don't.
Cheers to that.
The pirates decide on a thinly populated island in the Bahamas called New Providence, and the waterfront settlement of Nassau.
But don't imagine that Nassau is a glorious resort the way it is today. It's a shanty town, but it was certainly an area where pirates came and rendezvoused, and they learned from each other.
Nassau, the last and the greatest of the pirate hell towns, where the pirates really ran the show. They weren't just residents of a town, they ran the town.
¿Cómo estás?
You want to do me more?
I think that would be lovely, thank you.
Already a living legend, Henry Jennings retires from piracy to live the good life.
Very well.
But other privateers turned pirate are just beginning.
Move it, move it, move it!
That initial attack on the Spanish storehouse really kind of kicked off the great rush of pirates heading to New Providence.
Among those drawn to New Providence is a former privateer named Edward Teach. He will soon become the most famous pirate in history, better known as Blackbeard.
Let's board them and cut them to pieces!
You're watching True Caribbean Pirates on the History Channel. In 1713, for the first time in more than a century, the nations of Spain, England, France, and Holland are at peace in the Caribbean. In the wake of warfare comes the most lucrative trading triangle that the world has ever seen. Sugar to Europe, guns and trade goods to Africa, and slaves to America and the Caribbean.
The Caribbean was the big growth area in the world economy in the 17th and 18th centuries. I mean, sugar was the big new bonanza crop. And in some ways, the whole North Atlantic economy revolved around it.
She's the right one.
In the Caribbean, this cycle of wealth is under siege from former privateers who have crossed the line into piracy.
It's the perfect place for piracy because you've got a lot of islands situated through there, various nationalities, places to hide out in, and choke points that ships and vessels had to travel through, and you could just sit and lie in wait there, grab your prize, and then take off.
Move, lads, move! Stay on now!
By 1717, more than 2,000 pirates make their base in the Caribbean. Among them is an ex-privateer named Edward Teach. At 6 feet 4 inches tall, Teach is an intimidating giant of a man who will later become known as Blackbeard.
Don't make it so obvious. Keep your heads down, or I'll blow them off.
Since Edward Teach is an alias, historians know next to nothing about the days before he became Blackbeard.
It's only in early 1717 that Blackbeard appears in official documentation or historical sources of the time as a commander of a sloop out of New Providence, Bahamas.
November 28, 1717. Blackbeard sails alongside a second pirate ship, looking for prizes off the island of St. Vincent in the Central Caribbean.
Sail! Photo starboard bow!
A lookout spots a large merchant vessel flying a French flag.
Et messieurs, s'il vous plaît, ne les perdez pas de vue. Ces eaux regorgent de pirates, des bâtards de la piraterie.
The Concorde had 20 guns at that time, so they were outgunned and outmanned. But these pirate ships were quite maneuverable. They were a lot quicker and handier to move around.
Longue vue! Double mât. Neuvième permis.
Demi-tour, plein vent! Coupe au vent! Demi-tour!
As the Concorde tries to flee, the two pirate vessels move in on opposite sides of the ship.
Prime those cannons!
Demi-tour, plein vent! Coupe au vent!
The two pirate sloops, 6 guns on one, I believe 8 on the other, began to fire broadsides into the ship from either side. A pretty brazen thing to do when you consider that the ship had them outgunned and probably outmanned.
The small cannons on the sloops have little impact on the massive ship.
Reload! Reload!
There are not very many big ship-killing cannons in pirate ships. If you're a pirate, the last thing in the world you want to do is smash a ship to bits and watch it sink into the water, because that's your business, is getting things out of it, not, seeing it sink.
Blackbeard's most effective weapon is not made of steel.
Hoist her on!
You want them frightened of you. You want them wetting their pants as soon as they see that black flag and knowing that it's you. You want them to strike their colors, lower their topsails, and say, please, just don't hurt us. We'll give you anything you want. It amplifies their fears. They're afraid of you before they even see you.
I think Blackbeard could read his opposition. He knew what it took to scare the hell out of them.
Get the ladders up!
Tucked under Blackbeard's hat are links of slow match, burning rope used to ignite cannons.
And they would make a hazy smoke around his face, and with the ribbons in his huge beard and the smoke around his face, he looked like the devil himself when he went into battle.
You better have a nice cargo aboard for your sakes! Get the ladders up!
And so what you'd see advancing toward you is this big guy who's loaded with all kinds of weapons, and he's firing, and he's got this smoke wreathing his head, and he looks like a maniac. And if you don't surrender, he's gonna hack you to bits. So, up you go.
Blackbeard and his men loot the Concorde. But the greatest prize is the ship itself. Blackbeard renames her Queen Anne's Revenge and claims her as his flagship.
The Queen Anne's Revenge was an enormous ship by the standards of the pirates. It mounted 40 guns, bigger than virtually any other pirate vessel that was sailing the Caribbean at that time.
Blackbeard increases the ship's armament to 40 cannons. Then, on the leeward side of St. Vincent, he spots a British merchant vessel named the Great Allen.
Faster, Timmy, faster!
And they fired a broadside that was so powerful that it shook not only the ship, but the seas and the skies around her as well.
The mighty broadside convinces the captain and his officers to surrender the Great Allen without a fight.
Treasure, Frankie, Master Cut! Treasure, son!
Blackbeard sets the Great Allen crew adrift.
As a practical matter, slaughtering a merchant crew was a very poor tactic. It wasn't good business to slaughter crews.
After Blackbeard conquered the Great Allen, it was all his ego needed to grow stronger and more powerful.
Blackbeard rules through intimidation. But there's another side to Edward Teach that sets him apart from the average sailor of his day.
He knew how to read and write. I believe he was very intelligent and was able to use this. He was able to keep control of his men. You know, people have the stereotype that pirate captains had full control and could do anything they wanted, but that's not true.
Captain, Captain, Captain.
The biggest threat to a captain is an unhappy crew. At any point, the crew can call a council of war and vote out the captain. And if the crew votes this, the captain is powerless to stop it. Some pirate ships went through 13 captains in 2 years.
Mora! Mora! Hey! Who's the captain? You captain. Hey! Mora! Big pardon.
Basically, a pirate captain had authority only in time of battle, in which case his authority was near absolute. But otherwise, where the ship went, what it did, was basically according to the consent of the crew.
One of us, right? Right? All right. Let's hear a vote now. Come on.
A pirate ship was really a pure democracy, and it was arguably the only real democracy in all of the Western world at that time.
Israel! It's time we did a little something about that little problem we had in the Bahamas. Get the men together.
Thank you. This idea of equal representation, one man, one vote, elected leadership, it's really quite extraordinary.
Between November 1717 and mid-May 1718, Blackbeard captures 16 to 20 ships. With as many as 400 pirates and a fleet of 4 ships under his command, he is now the most famous and feared pirate in the world. In May 1718, Blackbeard and his crew decide on an act of piracy that will send shockwaves through the New World.
Anything going into or coming out of Charlestown Harbor belongs to us.
You're watching True Caribbean Pirates on the History Channel. April 11th, 1718. An ultimatum is delivered to pirates in the Caribbean on behalf of England's King George I.
As you probably know, I bring with me the King's pardon, which will forgive the past sins of all those who renounce piracy. For those of you who do not, the penalty is death. There is nothing in between. Long live the King!
Long live the King! Long live the King!
In Nassau, the capital of piracy in the Caribbean, almost every pirate accepts the King's mercy.
Your name? William Jennings and Benjamin Hornigold.
I've heard of you. My quarrel has never been with England. I want that known. I resisted the taking of English ships.
The time of taking ships and of breaking treaties is over. You have the King's pardon. If you could give your name to my clerk, thank you. Your name?
But while the King's warships are in the Caribbean, Blackbeard sails his fleet of 4 ships and almost 400 pirates to the busy seaport of Charlestown, South Carolina. Any ship coming in or out is immediately captured.
He robbed the ships as they came, and he took hostages off some. One of the hostages that he took, who was trying to leave Charleston, was a very important man named Samuel Wragg, and Wragg was a member of the South Carolina Colonial Council.
The deal was that he had captured several nobles of the town, various high-ranking members of society, and was holding them hostage and sent several of his men ashore with the demands. If they weren't back by the following nightfall with the aforementioned ransom, he was going to execute each and every one of his hostages and send their heads back in a rowboat.
I'm for the middle of the fat one. That way we're bound to hit something.
But instead of getting the ransom from the governor of South Carolina, Blackbeard's pirates are getting drunk.
Time dragged on, and Blackbeard was working himself up into a furor. He called Samuel Wragg into him, and he said, there must be some kind of a trick, and I'm going to start killing you people off.
Get the rope!
This one first, yeah. The fancy pants.
I know you think it's not your fault, but if you were more important people, they would have paid for you.
Aye.
And you're in the town council, and they still wouldn't pay. So guess whose neck we're gonna stretch first?
Like Captain, the hand.
It's your lucky day, my friends. Your lucky day.
The ransom is not what the hostages are expecting. One small metal chest.
Looks like the goods.
A small chest of medical supplies
Medicine? That's it?
to treat his crew members' ills.
Ever had the clap, lad?
Actually, diseases that they had picked up probably from girls in the Bahamas. Venereal diseases.
All right, lads. This should take care of us. Easy. They are, Frankie.
He did release the prisoners, but he sent them back stark naked, not a single stitch of clothing on them, just as a chiding for being a day late with his medicine.
Blackbeard's blockade of Charlestown sends a ripple of fear through the colonies, as governors and merchants wonder where he will strike next. In June 1718, Blackbeard orders his 4-ship fleet into a shallow channel off North Carolina called Topsail Inlet.
6 fathoms deep.
5 fathoms.
They're coming about, sir.
Steady as she goes.
It's not deep enough. He's going to run her
Who
aground.
knows these waters best? You or Blackbeard?
4 fathoms.
1 minute you're rising and falling gently on the swell.
Well, lad.
The next minute, there's solid ground that comes slamming up to meet you from underneath, taking your knees right out from under you.
They sprung the mast.
When the tide comes up, she'll sink.
Keach ran the Queen Anne's Revenge aground at Topsail Inlet hard enough to crack planks and spring the mast. He hit with extreme violence.
Her hull shattered, Queen Anne's Revenge is only kept afloat by the sandbar beneath her.
There'll be time for other trips. Save the treasure!
With surprising speed, the valuables are transferred to a small sloop manned by Blackbeard's most loyal men.
Quickly!
What's left behind here?
What? What did you say?
Blackbeard's crew realized then that something was not exactly right, and of course they started to question that.
I couldn't hear you. What did you say?
Ship's much too small for us, sir. We'll not all fit.
There'll be time to discuss this later. If any of you question me now, I'll blow off your head.
Blackbeard made a statement that how dare them question their captain. He would have their livers for lunch.
Back to work, all of you. Quicker!
Blackbeard's fearsome reputation buys the time he needs to complete his plan.
He was getting rid of the Queen Anne's Revenge for a purpose.
These 400 men that he had were too many to share the wealth with, and he became one of the early practitioners of what today we would call corporate downsizing. Blackbeard stranded his men on a sandbar and took off on this small sloop.
That was easy.
Now sailing in the sloop Adventure, Blackbeard heads north to Ocracoke Island. Some historians believe that Blackbeard is looking to retire from piracy. Others that he plans to establish a new base in North Carolina. Rumors of Blackbeard's presence reach Alexander Spotswood, governor of Virginia.
Lieutenant Maynard, promise that you will not forget.
Spotswood was enticed to attack Blackbeard because he had been promised not only more popularity as a governor, but he had been promised Blackbeard's treasure as well.
Anything you find will be brought back to Virginia for proper disposal and the allocation of your shares.
Understood.
Ready the line!
Now, of course, Spotswood didn't really have the authority to be sending warships down to North Carolina, but he ignored all that.
With your leave, Governor Spotswood.
Good hunting.
Cast off!
Touching the wind, Captain.
Command of the operation is given to Lieutenant Robert Maynard, a Royal Navy officer with a reputation for bravery. On November 17th, 1718, Maynard sets sail for Ocracoke. Five days later, Blackbeard sees Maynard's two sloops at the entrance to Ocracoke Inlet.
Just the two of them, then?
Aye. Holding outside the bar. Look to be waiting for morning high tide to cross.
Very good, very good. Quickly now, quickly.
They had even put sand on the ship to keep the British sailors from slipping in the blood. They knew it would be a bloody battle.
Cannons are loaded in every musket. Let's go over and say hello.
You're watching True Caribbean Pirates on the History Channel. On November 22nd, 1718, Blackbeard prepares to meet two unknown ships at the mouth of Ocracoke Inlet, North Carolina.
He suspected that this might be a Navy party coming in to attack him. Teach was never known to have shied away from a fight. He seemed to be, he seemed always to welcome going into battle. He was ready for whatever came along.
All right, lads, prime those cannons. Those bastards are after our treasure.
Nice and slow, helmsman. He's moving toward us. Thank you, I see him.
Teach hollered over to Maynard and said, "Damn you for villains, who are you?"
And from whence do ye come?
Hoist the colors!
Maynard hoisted his British colors and said, "You can see by our flag that we're no pirates." Blackbeard called for a drink of rum, quaffed it down, and said,
"Damnation beat me if I take any talker, or ask any from you."
Marines to the rails! Mark the route he follows with your eyes. Find a landmark and note every turn.
Blackbeard is outnumbered, 2 ships to 1, roughly 60 men to 19.
Take us to the south side of the deep hole. No soundings. We'll see how they follow us.
But Teach knows the channels and currents of the inlet better than any man alive.
The other big advantage that he had was he had 8 cannon on board his ship, and Maynard had no cannon at all. He had only small arms, cutlasses.
Take us to the east of the next sandbar.
Teach used these things to his advantage. He brought his ship up against a very shallow area. Maynard tried to come in after him with both of his sloops.
Watch for the current, she's taking us.
Now, hard a larboard!
Hard a larboard! Hard a larboard!
They've hit the bar!
And because they outweighed Teach's sloop, they ran aground.
She's stuck fast. We need to lighten her, fast as you can.
All cannon to the port side! Bring her about, nice and easy.
While Teach arranges his cannon for a broadside, Maynard desperately tries to lighten his ship.
Quickly!
He wasn't thinking about, what are we going to drink if we have to go back? He was thinking about, we're going to do whatever it takes right now. We're going to win this fight.
Everything overboard, there's no need to fight. Quickly!
Hold your fire! Let's line them both up!
We're free! Quickly! We need some wind!
Fire! Reload!
While Blackbeard reloads, Maynard's second sloop retreats back to sea. But Maynard refuses to quit.
Hold your line! Fire!
When he locked into this fight, he was not coming out. It was going to be a fight to the death.
Master of the king, you're stopping this boat right now!
Blackbeard orders a second broadside.
Gun! Ready? Fire! Down!
When the smoke cleared and Blackbeard looked over, there appeared to be only Maynard out on the deck and the man with the helm. He didn't see anyone else still alive.
They're all knocked in the head, mates! Let's board them and cut them to pieces! Ah!
They threw their grappling hooks. They grappled alongside, pulled the two sloops close together, and Blackbeard's men screaming and charging, waving their cutlasses and shooting their pistols, swarmed over the side.
Once Blackbeard is on board, Maynard's trap is sprung.
20 or so men came swarming up the ladders with their pistols firing and their cutlasses swinging, and it was a pretty even match at that point. Blackbeard and Maynard were face to face. They both pulled pistols and fired point blank. But perhaps because of the amount of rum that Blackbeard had consumed the night before, his bullet missed, and Maynard shot him head on, and strangely, that didn't seem to slow him down much. He broke off Maynard's cutlass and was about to finish him off when one of Maynard's men came up from behind him. And he took a strong swing and hit Blackbeard in the neck.
Good one, lads.
Blackbeard went cutlass and pistol with Maynard before he finally dropped to the deck. He died a pirate's death. He died the death you would expect someone like that to die.
With Blackbeard dead, his crew give up the fight.
After he died, Maynard cut his head off so that he could bring it back as a trophy. Threw his body overboard. The legend is that Blackbeard's body swam 3 times around the ship before it sunk.
Blackbeard's decapitated head becomes a grisly trophy, first hung from Maynard's bowsprit. News of Blackbeard's death spreads quickly through the Caribbean. In New Providence, it reaches someone determined to become the most famous pirate in history.
You're the best damn pilot ever! Blackbeard!
Her name is Anne Bonny. You're watching True Caribbean Pirates on the History Channel. In early 1718, the pirate haven of Nassau is no place for a lady. But it's the perfect place for Anne Bonny.
Anne Bonny, by all accounts, was a beautiful woman. Anne was raised in one of the wealthiest families in Charleston at the time. She had everything that she wanted. She was apparently sought by all of the young men in the region.
The search for adventure has led Anne Bonny from Charleston, South Carolina, to New Providence in the Bahamas.
Whatever you would like, anything.
Anything?
Anything.
Oh, then I'll just have the one you're holding.
Now she sets her sights on one of Nassau's most popular pirates.
It's mother's milk. Go get me another.
His name is John Rackham.
John Rackham. He is more popularly known as Calico Jack Rackham. He'd been known for dressing in flashy clothes, calico prints, and being rather of a dandy at the time. She fell head over heels in love with him.
The only problem, Anne Bonny is already married.
The governor threatened to have Anne flogged if she didn't go back to her husband. In order to stay together, they decided to do the one thing that Rackham was good at.
Let's do it then.
Go pirating. By the time the sun comes up, they're out of Nassau Harbor, sail set, heading toward the west, and Anne Bonny's pirate career has begun.
June 1719, Jack Rackham and Anne Bonny prepare to board a Dutch merchant ship.
Grappling hooks are thrown across to the other ship. The two ships are bound together. Rackham and his pirates pour over the bulwarks of the other ship.
Most of the crew surrender without a fight.
Put it down. Put it down. Put it down. Get it down. Captain, we got one up front.
But one sailor refuses to drop his sword.
What's your name, lad?
Mark Reed.
So you're English?
Aye.
Do you ever mind to come pirating? Less work, more pay, better rum.
When a pirate captured a merchant ship, generally one of the first things they did was to gather the crew and ask if anyone on the crew wanted to join the pirates. And that, in fact, was the primary recruiting tool.
I'll come, on the account.
Mark Reed proves himself as a capable sailor and an excellent swordsman. But Calico Jack Rackham soon regrets bringing him on board.
It became clear after a while that Anne had some feelings for this young sailor, Mark Reed. So Rackham was getting increasingly jealous because Anne was spending time with this young sailor. Finally, he can't stand it anymore. He's going to confront them.
So he says to him.
You can call my swords with you, but I don't have to.
Wait, what are you doing?
He can't come aboard my ship and take my woman.
What you gonna do? Shoot us for having a laugh?
I will. I'll shoot you too if you move it the bloody way.
Captain, I'm not a threat.
No, put that back on. And
will you stop your yapping? It's only you and I know about it.
You see, no threat.
Bloody hell, you're a woman.
I am.
A woman?
I knew as soon as I saw her.
Mary Reed.
I need a drink.
The chances of this happening are extraordinary, that the two of them should meet on the high seas, and Anne starts falling in love with him. Her, I should say.
So what's your story?
Mary had spent most of her life dressed as a boy. She had been a foot boy. She had served in the British Navy as a cabin boy. And had actually apparently been a very successful soldier.
With each successive capture, word spreads through the Caribbean. Calico Jack Rackham has 2 women pirates aboard his ship.
Don't you move! Don't you move! Where is the treasure?
No one had ever heard of anything like this before. You know, in the days where women wouldn't even get a job or an education per se, here are 2 women who are pirates, and they're doing it openly and flaunting their sex. It was very sensational.
Tell me where it is! Do you want to hang tonight? Huh? I'm talking to you!
It really became the true crime drama of the 18th century.
On June 6th, 1719, off the west coast of Africa, another drama is playing out. One that will soon bring the most successful pirate in history to the Caribbean.
Roberts, isn't it? You do navigation for this ship?
Bartholomew Roberts is the navigator on a slave ship captured by pirate Howell Davis.
I want you to join us.
I'm no pirate.
Most pirates are volunteers, but when Bart Roberts refuses to join, he is forced into service.
A forced man aboard a pirate ship is someone who is serving the pirate but has no choice. He is told, basically, serve or die.
A navigator was extremely important to pirate ships, who at this time were crisscrossing between the Americas, the Caribbean, and the African coast, following the slave trade and the riches that it brought.
To the wild, undisciplined pirates, Roberts is an enigma.
Here you go. The water tastes better with a bit of rum in it.
Maybe so. I don't drink.
Not even ale?
Nothing. I know what you're thinking. But truly, I don't care.
Bart Roberts' most unusual characteristic was that he was a teetotaler, which is virtually unheard of in the pirate community.
1 month after Roberts is forced into piracy, Captain Howell Davis is killed in an ambush on the island of Principe off the west coast of Africa.
So, who's the new fool you got to be leading us here?
That'll be you.
In an astonishing move, the veteran pirates offer the captaincy to the newcomer.
So you do it then?
When Roberts was quizzed, he said he feared none of them. He didn't care about their feelings. He was better than they were.
So, a short life and a merry one will be my motto. And I'll be your captain.
Any thoughts about where to sail to?
We've got a dead captain to avenge.
He felt his first act had to be something personal, something to really affirm the crew behind him and his leadership. And he thought nothing better than to go back to the town that had murdered their previous captain and exact their revenge. They had no warning and no time to react before the pirates stormed ashore.
Can't fire a stray shot. Kill them! Kill them all!
He was someone who would exact the most extreme revenge upon anyone who resisted.
Why aren't they dead yet? There. Now you can take whatever you want.
Everything that wasn't nailed down was taken with them, and they sailed out, all without losing a single man. At that point, the crew was solidified behind him.
It was a very terrible retribution. And this is a man who was a total teetotaler and kept Sunday services on his pirate ship. So there's quite a dichotomy in what his thinking was.
To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven. God says the world is ours for the taking.
On Robert's urging, the pirates set sail for the Caribbean. He thinks that easy pickings await. Roberts crosses the Atlantic, wreaking havoc and taking ships as he heads towards the Caribbean. In January 1720, word of his advance reaches the local governors of Barbados and Martinique. The governors hire pirate hunters, private vigilantes, to hopefully hunt down and defeat Roberts.
Benson! Here, northeast.
Those governors had threatened his life. And there was no way Bart was going to allow that to happen. He was out for vengeance. It was almost as if they had the audacity to say that they're coming after me. To hell with them. They're in trouble now.
What he wanted was to kill the governor of Barbados and kill the governor of Martinique.
How long they been hanging us, huh? They've been hanging us since the start of time.
Black Bart Roberts issues a declaration of war.
Their turn. A short and merry life have we, huh, lads?
His pirate ship against the world. You're watching True Caribbean Pirates on the History Channel. 1720. The pirates who once ruled the Caribbean are now being hunted by the navies of 4 nations.
The French were getting better, the Dutch were getting better, the Spanish were getting better at killing them. From about 1718 onwards, Naval Admiralty records show 200 to 300 pirates being hanged every year. They were decimated.
Nice, right?
Say something nice.
For Calico Jack Rackham and the women pirates, Anne Bonny and Mary Read, it is a bad time to let down their guard. On October 22nd, 1720, Jack Rackham and his crew are anchored off Dry Harbor Bay, Jamaica. The men have been drinking heavily for several hours. Only the women remain sober. An approaching sail heralds opportunity or disaster.
Get the lads.
A ship didn't approach that boldly unless they meant business, unless they were specifically hunting for pirates.
Get up here now if you don't want to hang!
Let me see. The women are able to rally the men to slip the cable and set sail.
Anchor's going! Hold the sheets now!
Outnumbered by over 100 men, the pirates' only hope is to slip away once darkness falls.
Who are you? Where's your port?
Why?
Nobody knows if it's drink or bravado that prompts Jack Rackham's response.
Jack Rackham from Cuba!
Rackham shouts defiantly, "I'm John Rackham of Cuba." The sun's going down. In dim light, guns are blasting them with grape shot and round shot. They can hear the shot whistling overhead.
Fast and maneuverable, Rackham's small sloop is on the verge of escape.
A round shot from Barnett's ship slams into the boom, which holds the lower part of Rackham's mainsail, and shatters the boom, essentially disabling the vessel.
The pirates know they will soon be boarded by overwhelming numbers.
And this is going to be it. If they're captured, they're dead, and they all know it.
Where are you going? I'm not gonna hang for you, Jack.
And they go down below again, and they start drinking. They accept their fate, essentially. I mean, they know that's it. And they were all arrested and brought back to the capital of Jamaica in irons and put on trial.
Tried first, the men are sentenced to hang.
Anne Bonny and Mary Read don't have any more defense than Rackham and his men did. So it's a pretty short trial. There really is not any question of their guilt.
Do you have any final words?
And Anne Bonny and Mary Read both had a unique claim that Admiralty courts never heard before in defense of why they should not be hung.
We plead our bellies, my lord. We're both quick with child.
Very well. This will be verified, and if true, your execution will be stayed, but only until such time as you have given birth. Guards, take them away.
Well, Anne Bonny and Mary Read are both put back in prison, and they're left there until their children are born, in which time they're going to be hanged.
Come on, move it along.
In contrast to the court proceedings, there are few records of what happened to the women pirates in jail. On April 8th, 1720, Mary Read dies. Some believe it is fever. Others that she died during childbirth. There are no records of Anne Bonny's fate.
Her father was still a plantation owner in the New World. It's been well speculated that her father pulled some strings to smuggle her out. The fact that she never showed up in any Admiralty records as being hung is evidence of the fact she was never killed.
Anne Bonny disappears from public record. Approximately 900 miles away, near the island of Martinique, Black Bart Roberts is on a personal quest for revenge.
You're sure the governor of Martinique is on board?
Positive. But it's a man of war, 32 gun and 9 swivel, 24-pound cannon to your 4-pounders. Nothing can stand up to it.
Set a course for Martinique.
It's difficult to think of any other instances where a pirate captain has taken on a man of war. He utterly fearless. He's almost looking for death.
We're coming for you, Martinique! Des pirates! On nous attaque!
You're watching True Caribbean Pirates on the History Channel.
Alors, capitaine, ces taxes en
April 1721.
J'ai fini déjà!
The French governor of Martinique is traveling on board a 32-gun man of war.
À l'heure actuelle,
A French merchant vessel pulls alongside to relay some news.
Je disais, j'ai des nouvelles de Bart Roberts. Je sais où il se trouve.
Où? Demandez-lui où il est.
Où se trouve-t-il? On l'a! We're coming for you, Martinique! Des pirates! On nous attaque! Music!
It was the element of surprise. No man of war expected him to be approached by a French merchantman and suddenly get raked with gunfire across your deck. French man of war wouldn't have been expecting that at all.
Down in the brain, you slime!
Grapple alongside, pull the ship in close, throw some of these homemade hand grenades as men would scramble over the side, swinging their cutlasses and firing their pistols and attempting to force the quarry into a quick surrender.
Bring me Martinique! Governor, man! Find the governor! Be quick about it!
Captain, what will we do with him?
Bring him to me. I was afraid you'd killed yourself. Not man enough for that, I see.
Prenez ce que vous voulez.
Tell him he has 1 minute to say his prayers. Make a noose!
Non, non!
I don't care what you have to say.
And he hung the governor of Martinique from the yardarm of his own ship and felt that the man deserved it because he had the effrontery to go after him to try and capture him.
He was hated and feared across the world. The governors of all the Caribbean colonies wanted him dead. They're all imploring the Royal Navy to find Roberts and kill him. So he decided this time to head back across to Africa once more.
On February 10th, 1722, Black Bart Roberts is anchored off Cape Lopez, Africa, with enough treasure to fill 3 ships.
What is this? Bunch of drunken idiots. Hey!
His crew's been celebrating all night because the day before they'd taken a 200-ton Pink, a merchantman called the Neptune, which was full of alcohol.
The Neptune is approximately the 400th ship taken by Roberts in his 3-year career.
To put it in perspective, Blackbeard took 23 ships in a 15-month career, and Captain Kidd only took 2 real prizes. He was absolutely the most successful, most famous, most feared pirate in Western history.
A sail is spotted on the horizon.
However, as it comes in closer and closer, Robert seems to suspect something's wrong, and deserter from the Swallow rushes up to him, a man called Armstrong, and says,
"Well, not that ship. That's the Swallow. Royal Navy."
Look lively, lads. On the ready.
Carrying 32 cannon, the Swallow is a Royal Navy man of war.
We got a Royal ship at our heels. Move! A Navy ship has us dead to rights.
Robert's men are drunk, and they're not in a position to put up a serious fight, particularly not against a real enemy like a British man-of-war.
Unlike the French man-of-war that didn't suspect Roberts was going to attack it, this man-of-war is fully ready for action.
On your orders, gunner. Make it count.
Go! Get out! Go!
While his drunken crew take cover from the inevitable broadside, Roberts remains on deck.
Roberts is sitting astride a cannon. It looks like he's waiting for death. He doesn't seem to care whether he lived or died.
That's Roberts in the red jacket. Fire!
Grape shot hits him. He falls over. Dead.
Bring me a cloth. This man goes into the drink.
The crew honor a promise to ensure that Roberts' body would never be put on display.
Best pirate I ever knew.
Ready?
And go.
So Roberts is there somewhere. Or his skeleton's off the coast of Africa, wrapped in chains.
Fire muskets. Prepare to board.
Once the charismatic leader is dead, all the heart goes out of his crew, and they're captured.
Drop it. Drop your weapon. Come on.
There were certainly pirates after Roberts, just as there were pirates before Roberts. But Roberts' demise really brought an end to this golden age.
From Morgan to Blackbeard to Anne Bonny to Black Bart Roberts, the pirates who ruled the Caribbean also captured the imagination of the world.
The essence of every pirate crew, no matter how debaucherous, no matter how violent, no matter how decadent their lifestyle, it always centered about freedom.
In defiance of every law but their own, pirates pursue the life that will lead to their destruction.
This is not a lifestyle that could be maintained for very long. There were so many things that could kill them. A hangman's noose, a shipwreck, a broadside, duel. There were so many ways for pirates to die. I think they recognized that they were not going to have a very long lifespan. And they were right.
We celebrate pirates because they were rebels. But pirates were not what we think of them as some grand, egalitarian group of sea-roving Robin Hoods. Pirates were cutthroats, murderers, thieves, people who went beyond the pale of society. They were, in a Latin phrase used at the time, enemies of all mankind.
A short and merry life have we, lads?